After an argument, he pretends everything is normal, but I feel the need to discuss what has happened. Is this a wrong expectation? Okay, so this brings us on to the whole topic of arguing, okay? And arguing, like I said, is part and parcel of life, especially married life. The Prophet ﷺ had his fair share of arguments with his wives. But it's all about how to make the arguing process all so much more healthy. The first thing you always have to remember is, our intention in the argument is to come to a solution. We're looking for a solution and not looking to win one over the other person, okay? So, because that's just all ego driven. So what I think is happening in this situation is that you have to be able to address all the issues relating to that argument in that argument, because what you don't want to do is bring up past arguments or keep things going. So as much as possible, you have all your rules there. However, I think that what you're struggling with is really getting everything out on the table. And there's a reason for that. It possibly could be that, and I think this is where the other person can really help. If the other person allows the partner to feel safe to say whatever they need to say, then you can actually have a lot more honesty and get somewhere. The problem is that often we feel we can't say certain things to our partners because they will get upset and it'll make things better. So what we do is we just don't mention those bits because they're too awkward, they're too uncomfortable. What happens is exactly this situation, right? Because it was too uncomfortable to say, you really wanted to say it, you didn't say it, and then it's still there. You see, it's still in there and you've not got it out. So what we need to get to the point where you're allowing yourself to just get whatever it is out on the table, and the other person should not look at it as just like an attack on them. They should look at, okay, there's a genuine issue in my spouse's heart. They've put it on the table. How can now we both try to come up with a solution? Okay. I think if you go in with that attitude, then you'll find it easier to get everything off your chest. But if you're afraid to say certain things, and I think this is where both couples can really try and help each other to stay safe. I mean things like, it could be that you feel you can't say anything about his mother because that's a no-go area, right? So if the mother genuinely has done something wrong, you can't address it, so it's always there. So what happens is he thinks the argument's over, you're still upset, tomorrow something happens and he's like, what's wrong with my wife? I don't get it. I thought we discussed this yesterday, but you haven't. You see, you've only discussed part of it. So this is why it's in everyone's interest to allow the other person to fully get things off the chest and don't take things to heart. You mentioned not to compare our spouse to anyone. Are we allowed to compare to the Prophet and strive to be more like him? لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Surely in the example of the Prophet is the best examples. Obviously the Prophet is our example. However, if you're going to compare, or you're going to say, look, you should try and be more like the Prophet ﷺ, he can equally say, well, you should try to be like Khadija radiallahu anha. You see? And now we're never going to be like the Prophet because he is the pinnacle of perfection. But what we can do, what we try and do is get our inspiration from there. It's like, I want to try and be like that. The thing about comparing to other people, what I meant was that sometimes this is actually a trick of shaitan, or to say, oh, look at that couple, because everyone, it's like Instagram, isn't it? Everybody looks great on Instagram, and you get these couple ones now, that they're always happy, clappy, and I remember there was one particular sister on Instagram, lots of followers, I don't want to give too much away, but basically had a lot of followers, and always looked quote unquote like glamorous, always looked really good. She's always like got the nice new bag, etc. Yet I didn't know that this was the case, but she'd emailed in to ask for advice, and so it was just my admin person that said, look, this person's emailed in. They didn't actually give away what it was, but they said, like, she said, I'm just surprised because she looks always so happy with her husband on Instagram, but clearly there's a problem. So obviously it came through to me, and there was a marital problem there. So don't compare yourself to other people, because people put on, like I always say, there's a mask, right? People put on a mask to the world. It's like makeup, right? When you put on makeup, that's not really what you look like. What you look like is 6 o'clock in the morning when you just woke up for Fajr. and your breath smells, that is really you, you're right, before you brush your teeth. The makeup is a version of you, and the same thing in public life, it's a version, right? So for example, at the moment you're seeing one dimension to me. You're not seeing me in my home. You're seeing me as Shaykh Amer. You're not seeing me how I'm like as a husband or as a father and so on. So the thing is, don't get fooled by comparing yourself to other people, because it's almost like it's not 100% accurate and real. A husband expects his wife to work and financially contribute, but when there's a disagreement, he tells us she isn't allowed to work nor leave the house. What should she do? In this instance, if he's okay, he allows her to leave. This is abuse. This is verbal abuse. Not verbal, sorry. This is emotional abuse. And this is not the way Sharia has been designed. The problem is not the Sharia. The problem is people, because what they do is they use hadith, oh, I've got the right to do this, I've got the right to do that, as a tool to hammer the other person, as a tool to get one over the other person. It's going back to the same thing I said about arguments, where you're just using it to get one over the other person, to pull them your way. That's not the way Sharia has been designed, okay? If you, like I said before, if you get into the nitty-gritty of law, that is not going to give you happiness in your life, okay? Because you're going to say, well, right, you can't leave. The wife's going to say, right, I'm not cooking because I don't need to do that either. You can do all the housework yourself as well. That doesn't lead to happiness, okay? That is not the way our attitude should be. So if there's a disagreement, you shouldn't be using things, as a punishment, to using, Allah's laws. It's like you're misusing that, and it's abusing of God's laws. What you should do is get to the core of what is the actual issue and it comes back down to the whole issue of disagreeing, arguing properly and coming to a solution. That's what it is. It's a skill, like I said, which so many of us lack.